Here we are at the Stone Church in Raynham, First Congregational Church, but everyone knows it as the Stone Church. So we'll come in. The building here dates from 1913 with the stone exterior and thick stone walls, so come on in. This building's been sitting here since 1915, so it's a landmark. People, say, turn at the Stone Church, give directions by it, and so on. I've been the pastor here since 1991, so that's quite a while. It's a bit unusual these days, a long pastorate like that, but it's not unheard of. The first two pastors of this church, we're talking in the 1700s, stayed until they died. I don't plan to do that, but I think it's good for the church to have someone around for a while. Our Sunday services are at 9:30 a.m. They're 9:30 a.m. year-round, and we have programs for children, Sunday school, and choir. The church was founded in 1731. And back in those days, this was actually a part of Taunton. People in this area wanted to go to church on Sunday mornings, but they decided that the distance from here to the center of Taunton, they decided that was a long way. You've got to walk approximately 3 miles to that church. A church that really didn't have central heating, and sit through a service that might be 2+ hours long, and then walk home. It was very difficult. So the movement came about to establish a church in this area. And initially they wanted it to be a precinct of Taunton. But Taunton wanted nothing to do with that. They didn't want to divide up the people of their church. But the people here were persistent, and eventually they got approval from the legislature in Massachusetts to establish a separate town. They decided the only way to get their own church was to break off from Taunton. A lot of them farmers, so they built their church buildings kind of with the skeletons of a barn, really, and just dressed them up a little more inside. A simple building. And that served the church from 1731 to really about 1770, when the people decided that it was too small and it was getting run down. So they wanted to build a new building, but the people who lived a little further north wanted it closer to them. And it was a big controversy. And eventually they built here on this plot of land here where the Stone Church stands today. In the 1830s, the people decided that that church was too run down and they wanted a new church. So they built another church right next to the old church, and they had hopes that someone would buy the old building and move it, which when you think about back in those days, you think that would be a very daunting proposition. But a lot of buildings were moved then, and in some ways it was easier because there were no wires and the telephone and power lines that had to be moved, so it could be done. But no one wanted it, except the town wanted to use it as a town hall. This is the second meeting house, the second church building, and there's some artistic license taken in this painting because that's supposed to be the four corners out in front here. And this is the building that originally was built kind of a plain building, and the steeple was added on afterwards. And this is the one that when the church decided to build another building, and they didn't want this one anymore, but the town sort of wanted it to be the town hall, the people of the church came and cut the steeple loose and pulled it down. It went right across Orchard Street. So that didn't make them any friends with the town officials, but it was a done deal. It was, it was done. So that's probably what it looked like. That's the only image we have of that building, so we don't know. There's no image of the original building, which was down probably around the intersection of South Main Street and Richmond Street. The third building stood here from the 1830s until a July day in 1913. Next to the church, there was a blacksmith and some other buildings. So there was a small house that was divided up into apartments. There was some other shops. A fire started next door, and the fire spread from one building to another. Taunton was called, and they sent their motorized fire truck. It was one of the first motorized fire trucks in the area. But by the time they got here, not only had the original building started to burn, the church was burning, the house on the corner was burning, everything was on fire. And all they could do was to stop it from spreading across the street and from spreading to other buildings. So the church was a total loss, and it was devastating to the people of the church. But they very quickly met and were determined to rebuild. But they thought, that fire started from another building. Maybe we should have an exterior that's more fireproof. So they came up with the idea of a stone exterior. I have heard, although I have not seen any proof, that for the large quantity of stone needed to construct this building, that stone walls in the area were, basically cleared out, sometimes without the permission of landowners. No one has come back to claim their stones, fortunately, but that's the story that was told. The construction took some time. In 1915, the church was ready to be dedicated, so that happened in April of 1915. An interesting part of the dedication is that the new church, the stone church, was built wired for electric lights, but electricity had not yet come to Raynham Center. They were anticipating it, but it wasn't there. So the evening service of dedication had to be lit by oil lamps because the electric lights weren't working, no electricity. So the stone church has served us well now for over 100 years. We celebrated in 2015 the 100th anniversary of this building. Naturally, with any building, there's work that has been done over the years, and roofs and patching and so on and so forth. But really, a lot of the stone church is original, including the original pews and so on. In the sanctuary of the church, the pews are original, but the front of the church actually was rearranged. Originally, there was a pipe organ up where the altar is, and the altar would have been in front of that. We switched to an electronic organ in 1960s, and we bought a new electronic organ not that long ago. But this layout of the sanctuary has been like this since 1965. So we have a pulpit on one side and a lectern for the other side for the reader. We have people from the church take turns reading on Sundays, and organ and piano, and space for the choir. We have a great choir, a very musical church. And of course, the altar and communion table and baptism font are up there. The original church pews, kind of some fanciness here, but if you look here, the motif copies the motifs of the windows of the church. Now, I was in the synagogue in Taunton some years ago, and I noticed that their pews were similar, except they had a Star of David, and it turns out that the synagogue was built about the same time in the 19-teens, and so I imagine the pews came from the same manufacturer. We built an addition that's really about the same size as the original building on the back of the building. That addition has been a great a godsend, really, because we can do things that we never would have dreamt of doing in the past because we just didn't have space. It also gave us handicap access, where getting someone in a wheelchair into the stone church in the old days was pretty difficult, if not impossible, in some cases. So we have a lift and we have accessible bathrooms, and it's a great thing. Front door, we have doors that face South Main Street, and those, of course, are actually the front doors of the church. Mostly people don't come in that way except on Sunday mornings, because the main entrance of the church is part of the addition, and it faces the parking lot, the glass double doors. And go in there, there's a few stairs going up there, but there's a lift. The offices and restrooms are up there. You go in one direction, it leads you over into the old building. There's a passageway. At one time, this was my office. This was the pastor's office. And of course, where that door is now was a window. And when we built the addition, 2006, 2007, they had to cut through the stone walls, which was a challenge to cut through without doing any damage, but also getting through those thick stone walls, to build a doorway here and another one down below us in the basement area. So as we walk through here, we're walking from the 1913 building into the 2007 building right here. If you come to the top of the stairs in the entranceway and go in the other direction, you come to a hall, a social hall with a great kitchen where we have dinners and church fair and all kinds of events. This is a hall that is used for church suppers and our coffee hour after worship services. Sometimes the Sunday school uses it. There's a chorus that meets in here on Monday nights, and they fill this room with people singing. All kinds of activities happen here. And of course, the kitchen is down there, and it's a great kitchen for preparing for events and for dinners. The roots of Raynham and the First Congregational Church are intertwined. The history goes back and forth between the two. All of the events of the world affected the church, and the church hopefully was a positive effect on the community as well over the years. So we're steeped in history, but we're also a church that is looking to the present and to the future, which is why we are, I think, a very welcoming group and a group that prizes our children and values them, because certainly they are the future of the church. And so we're forward-looking as well as being grounded on our long history.